lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., November 15, 2022. I hereby appoint the Honorable Henry Cuellar to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 10, 2022, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties with time equally allocated between the parties and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip, limited to 5 minutes, but in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it's with a heavy heart that I rise today to honor a proud American, a great Hoosier, an outstanding man, and a very dear friend, Anthony Tony Moravec. Tony left us far too soon, and it's an honor to have his family in the House Gallery to join us here today. Born October 3rd, 1950, Tony Moravec was the embodiment of the American dream. He worked hard, treated everyone with respect, and had a joyous appreciation of life. Tony was chairman of BlairX Laboratories and the co-founder of Applied Laboratories. These two companies employed countless Hoosiers and brought vital economic development to Columbus, Indiana. Tony's commitment to our community did not end there. In fact, he went far beyond what many business leaders accomplish. In 1990, he and his company received the Entrepreneur Award from the state of Indiana. In 2009, he received the Company of the Year Award from the Columbus Chamber of Commerce for the restoration of Zaharico's, an ice cream store. In 2011, Tony received the Indiana University Provost Medal and was honored with the President's Circle Laurel Pin and the Partners in Philanthropy Cornerstone Award. In 2016, he received an award for the restoration of the Columbus Pump House. Tony established scholarships at the Heritage Fund, Indiana University, Ivy Tech Community College, always seeking to educate the next generation of Hoosiers. Tony donated his collection of the works of old master drawings, including a series of scenes from the New Testament, to the IU Eskenazi Museum. It became the third largest repository of such drawings in the world, earning an Andrew W. Mellon Foundation endowment. Tony once remarked that he was part of our hometown, Columbus, by choice, not by chance, something proven in all his actions. Our relationship, our friendship, like so many others in our community, went far beyond business or politics. Tony meant so much to my wife, Denise, and I. It is exceptionally hard to underscore what an immense loss Tony's passing is to my family and our entire community. So today, I want to impart some wisdom from Tony's parents and grandparents that he recently shared with our community at the Moravec Hall dedication. Bite off more than you can chew and chew like hell. Be bold in everything you do. It has a magic about it. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. Do your job like you own the business. Maybe someday you will. Get an education. They can take your house, they can take your car, but they can't take your education. And finally, leave the place a better place than you found it, which Tony did. In fact, he left everywhere a better place than he found it. May Tony Moravec forever rest in peace. God bless this wonderful man, and may God bless his family. I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from references to occupants of the gallery. The Chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Blaskett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law, which was signed into law by President Joseph Biden on this historic day last year. The bipartisan infrastructure law is undeniably the largest long-term investment in U.S. infrastructure in almost 100 years, in almost a century. As we all know, our great economy relies on immense infrastructure of roads and bridges, freight rails and ports, electrical grids, access to high-speed internet, and on and on. Yet many of the current systems in place were built decades ago and needed to be enhanced to guarantee our nation's optimal economic performance. That is why, when passing the bipartisan infrastructure law, we knew, as President Biden said, we could grow the economy, enhance our competitiveness, create good jobs, and make our economy more sustainable, just, and resilient. Mr. Speaker, I believe we've done that. As I explained to many of my colleagues last year, the infrastructure of my home in the U.S. Virgin Islands had suffered extremely from systematic lack of investment. Our infrastructure issues were further exacerbated by the 2017 hurricanes Irma and Maria, which were both Category 5 hurricanes. So when you hear of 1 in 5 miles, or 173,000 total miles of our highways and major roads, and 45,000 bridges across the United States are in poor condition, think about what looks like on a hurricane-prone island where residents may rely on a single road for passage of crucial resources and emergency services vehicles. As Americans, the residents of the Virgin Islands needed us as Congress to step up. By passing the bipartisan infrastructure plan, we answered the call for all Americans. To date, the Virgin Islands has been allocated $18.4 million of an expected $96 million to rebuild and strengthen our roads and bridges. In addition, over 1,600 households in the U.S. Virgin Islands have already enrolled in the Affordable Connectivity Program, which aims to provide affordable high-speed internet to every American. That's about 43% of the total households on the island of St. John alone, who now have access to high-speed internet. Turning to the island's power supply, we now have much-needed capital to weatherize our power lines, which will prevent outages and make the power grid more resilient. Put differently, we are now better equipped to save lives. In addition to these historic investments, I'd like to highlight the announcement of 2 key projects. First, under our watershed project, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will invest $51.7 million to reduce flood risk and damage to the Savannah Gut in our capital, Charlotte Amalia. The area is within the 100-year-old floodplain and has recurring flooding problems primarily in the central business district and local elementary school. Therefore, as I'm sure you can tell, the completion of this project is vital to protecting the future of our children, schools, and local businesses. Second, in our airport project, the Department of Transportation has awarded nearly $4 million to Cyril Lee King Airport to support its modernization and improve safety. There are so many projects that all Americans are guaranteed because of the work of these House Democrats, along with our president, who have put the people of America forward in ensuring that infrastructure will meet the needs of a future America. So today, as we celebrate the many successes of the infrastructure plan, creating good-paying jobs, union jobs, helping fight climate change, advancing environmental justice, boosting domestic manufacturing, strengthening critical links in our supply chain, and ultimately lowering the cost of living for working families. I would like to challenge and encourage all of us to continue to work together to address the challenges of the American people, this country, and our world. Together, we can make a difference. I thank you, and I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Van Dyne, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Am I on? I think I'm on.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart. Over the weekend, tragedy struck North Texas as 6 lives were taken in an air show honoring our veterans. One victim was Texas 24 resident and local leader Terry Barker. Terry was the epitome of an all-American hero, an Army veteran, an American Airlines pilot of 36 years. Terry spent decades of his storied and accomplished life serving others. His service in the Army, an unmatched dedication to honoring veterans, is a testament to the kind of man Terry was. Just last week, to pay tribute to veterans, Terry helped set up the Keller Field of Honor. 1,776 full-size U.S. flags dedicated to the 1,776 heroes. He then took to the skies one last time in a World War II-era B-17 bomber to pay tribute to the greatest generation. Terry was also a dedicated public servant, spending 2 terms as a Keller City Council member. My friend and colleague, Keller Mayor Armin Mazzani, described Terry as his mentor and an ongoing and selfless man who always had a joke to share. Texas 24 lost an American patriot, a public servant, and beloved friend this week. I ask you to please join me in praying for Terry, his family, and all of those affected by this weekend's tragedy. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My good friend from Texas. I rise to honor Sergeant Dennis L. Pavlik, who is believed to be the last living Korean War POW from Nebraska. Sergeant Pavlik joined the United States Army in October of 1952 when he was inducted at Fort Omaha in Nebraska. Sergeant Pavlik was then assigned to B Company, the 22nd Armored Engineer for Artillery Basic Training, which he completed at Camp Chaffee, Arkansas. Following his completion of basic training, Sergeant Pavlik was assigned to C Battery, the 555 Field Artillery, also known as the Triple Nickel. Sergeant Pavlik then moved to a variety of locations across Korea, finally landing near Kumsang in a location known as the Kumsang Salient. It was there, on the night of July 13, 1953, that Sergeant Pavlik's artillery battery was under intense enemy counter barrage, ending in the eventual imprisonment of multiple United States soldiers. Sergeant Pavlik and his fellow soldiers were then forced to march north to a POW camp from the Chinese, referred to as Camp 6. It was here Sergeant Pavlik spent 42 days as a prisoner of war, which he has referred to as the longest 6 weeks of my life. Sergeant Pavlik stated, the most important lesson he learned during those 6 weeks is the knowledge of freedom. As the war in Korea ended, Sergeant Pavlik was then released from Camp 6 and eventually returned to United States soil on August 25, 1953, just 1 month after the official end of the Korean War. Sergeant Pavlik ended his military service on July 20th, 1954, and was awarded the Bronze Star with the V for Valor device, the Good Conduct Medal, the POW Medal, National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Service Medal, and 2 Battle Stars, the United Nations Service Medal, and the Korean Presidential Unit Citation. Today he resides in Omaha, Nebraska with his wife Luella and has 3 children and 5 grandchildren. Sergeant Pavlik also serves as a post commander for the American Ex-Prisoner of War Department of Nebraska. It's with great honor that I recognize the last known prisoner of war survivor from the Korean War and my good friend, Nebraska Sergeant Dennis L. Pavlik. I yield back the balance of my time.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to extend my condolences to the family of Vince Dooley, the legendary football coach at the University of Georgia. Coach Dooley was a talented multi-sport athlete in his youth and played quarterback for the Auburn University Tigers. In 1960, he married the love of his life, Barbara, and they have 4 children together. In 1963, he became the head coach of the University of Georgia Bulldogs, where he led them through 1988. During his tenure, he guided the prolific football team to a record of 201 wins and only 77 losses. Coach Dooley's teams won 6 Southeastern Conference championships and the momentous 1980 National Championship. As a coach, he received 5 Coach of the Year awards, was 5 times voted SEC Coach of the Year, and has now been inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. After he retired from coaching, he remained the athletic director at the University of Georgia until 2004, guiding the football program and building many other athletic programs into national powerhouses. Off the gridiron, Vince was passionate about gardening and American history and preservation. He was considered a master gardener and has a species of roses named after him. He was involved with many organizations that focused on preserving Revolutionary War battlefields and was inducted as a Georgia trustee by the Georgia Historical Society. Earlier this month, I was proud to sign on to a resolution alongside several members of the Georgia delegation thanking him for his service to our state. Vince Dooley was truly a pillar of his community, and his impact will be felt for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the Savannah Hilton Head International Airport on their selection as the Condé Nast 2022 Reader's Choice #1 airport in the United States. The Savannah Hilton Head International Airport is a hub for travel, regionally, nationally, and internationally. With its small-town feel, the Main Street-inspired concourse greets travelers with a plentiful helping of Southern charm. The many restaurants and shops provide weary travelers, both coming and going, with a snippet of what the First District has to offer. I personally am very well acquainted with this airport, as I've traveled through this airport hundreds of times on my way to and from Washington, D.C. Serving nearly 3 million passengers each and every year, the airport serves as a gateway to the First District of Georgia and its many destinations. Just a short drive away are world-class beaches, resorts, and golf courses, with the cultural hub of Savannah being foremost. Additionally, it serves as an important cargo hub in conjunction with the Port of Savannah, the fourth busiest port in the nation. Despite their businesses, they excel in providing outstanding customer service and Southern charm. For the third year in a row, they have been voted the #1 airport in the United States. I, on behalf of the entire First District of Georgia, congratulate the employees and the administration of the Savannah Hilton Head International Airport for earning this distinction. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commemorate the life and the service of the late Martin Thurman Grizzard of Thomaston, Georgia. Martin was born on October 17, 1938 in Hickson, Tennessee. Being the oldest of 4 brothers, he learned to take care of the people around him at an early age. In 1964, he would graduate from Mercer University's Southern School of Pharmacy, committing his life to the care of others. Just 2 years later, Martin opened Northside Drugs, a pharmacy in the small town of Thomaston, Georgia. During his long career as a pharmacist, he would serve on the Georgia State Board of Pharmacy, eventually becoming president in 1984. In 2013, his store would serve its 1 millionth customer after nearly 50 years of faithfully providing care for the community of Thomaston. Though 1 million seems like a large number, it only represents a fraction of the true impact that Martin would have on this world during this time, not only as a pharmacist, but as a philanthropist and a father. Finally laid to rest at the age of 83, he is survived by his wife of 62 years, Mrs. Betty Grizzard, alongside his daughter Pam and his 3 sons, Martin Jr., Michael, and Stuart. The prayers of myself and my family belong to the Grizzard family and all those impacted by this tremendous loss. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the leadership and the service of my good friend, my former suite-mate, David Ralston, who recently announced that he would be ending his tenure as Speaker of the Georgia State House. David has been Speaker since 2010 and has overseen some of the most historic legislative accomplishments in our state's history. He attended Young Harris College and North Georgia College, where he earned his bachelor's degree with honors. He then went on to graduate from the University of Georgia School of Law. An attorney by trade, Speaker Ralston started his career in public service in 1992 when he was elected to the Georgia State Senate. In 2002, David was elected to the Georgia House and was chosen as Speaker in 2010. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Flood, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, during new member orientation with the freshman class, of which I now claim, we were addressed by the clerk of the House of Representatives. She shared with us the history of her post, and that in 1789, the clerk of the House of Representatives was named as the second officer following the Speaker of this storied institution. Mr. Speaker, I have a great privilege today to rise and congratulate one of the nation's longest-serving clerks of a state legislature in America's history. Just like yesterday when we were impressed with the history of this institution, it goes without saying that institutions like this are sacred because of the work of the nonpartisan staff, the people who pay attention to the parliamentary procedure, the quiet ones that sit next to the loud ones, the clerks of the United States, state legislatures, and this body. Mr. Patrick O'Donnell lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he's had a distinguished career as clerk of the Nebraska unicameral legislature. In 1977, he became the assistant clerk. He became the clerk in 1978. Patrick has a record of defending the legislature as a unique institution in our United States. He believes in the process and has championed the vision of Nebraska voters when the voters changed to a unicameral back in 1937. As a former speaker of the Nebraska unicameral, he taught me and hundreds of other legislators what a powerful and important role our branch of government should play in leading this nation and our states. The founders of this country envisioned the legislative branch as the most powerful branch of government. It was clear their intent was that the people, directly elected in their districts, should decide where the money is spent and the policies to be enforced. After 44 years on the job, Mr. Patrick O'Donnell is retiring now as the longest-serving clerk among his contemporaries in state legislatures across this nation. Only a couple of past clerks have longer recorded tenures. It is my privilege and honor on this floor to recognize a clerk that has gone above and beyond for the people of his state and been a resource to clerks and legislators throughout the United States during his 44-year tenure. On behalf of the 1st District of Nebraska, congratulations and best wishes on your retirement, Mr. Clerk, Mr. Patrick O'Donnell of Nebraska. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Tenney, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the Joseph family of Utica, from Utica, New York, and their dedicated and honorable service in defense of our great nation. During World War II, 5 of the Joseph brothers served in our armed forces, rising to the challenge to democracy and freedom and defending all free people's rights across the globe. The Joseph brothers served in all branches of the military across multiple fronts in harm's way consistently. Sadly, none of the brothers could return home for their mother's funeral as she died when they were deployed across multiple fronts and theaters of combat. While it's impossible to comprehend and appreciate what they all went through, all just young men coming of age, literally under enemy fire, I wanted to provide this body and this country with a small snapshot of what each Joseph brother endured and did for their community, state, and our country. Seaman Second Class Edward Michael Chick Joseph, having served in the United States Navy during World War II, receiving an honorable discharge from the Navy on November 28, 1944. Ed, otherwise known as Chick, earned the Combat Action Ribbon, Navy Good Conduct Medal, American Campaign Medal, Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, with 3 Bronze Battle Stars, World War II Victory Medal, and foreign awards of the Philippine Republic Presidential Unit Citation and the Philippine Liberation Ribbon with 1 Bronze Battle Star. Torpedoman Mate Second Class Joseph Edward Joseph, honorably discharged from the United States Navy on January 4, 1946, serving in World War II aboard the USS Aulick. On November 29, 1945, 6 Japanese planes attacked the Aulick in the Leyte Gulf while on anti-submarine patrol, with 31 men giving their life in defense of their ship, comrades, and country, 41 being wounded, and 1 sailor missing in action. Anthony Joseph, United States Marine Corps, World War II, died in 1945, sadly due to cancer. Lewis Joseph, United States Merchant Marines, World War II, serving in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Mediterranean theaters, visiting 31 countries, islands, and territories. 2 of the ships Lewis served on were sunk, with 1 sinking, causing Lewis to spend 17 days adrift in a raft. Lewis's unit earned the Presidential Unit Citation with 2 battle stars. Lewis used his brother Joseph's identification to enlist initially in the Coast Guard as he was underage to serve his country. John G. Joseph, United States Coast Guard during World War II, also serving as a corporal and auto equipment operator in the United States Army during the period immediately after World War II, serving from December of 1945 through December of 1948, having been separated from Fort Slocum in New York. I've been fortunate enough to know many World War II veterans and to hear firsthand their actions and experiences. Sadly, members of our greatest generation are dwindling in numbers, and our current generation may not know of their sacrifice and service, other than what is portrayed in Hollywood or in history books. The Joseph family should be an example to all Americans of what answering the call to service means, especially when our ideals and our values are directly threatened by tyrants and oppressors. Their family stateside supported them while under great stress, knowing these sons of Utica, New York, were direct players in one of the greatest military struggles in our nation's history. I am honored to represent subsequent generations of the Joseph family who all continued the tradition of the 6 Joseph brothers in public service and community service. I'd like to thank the Joseph family for their service and all of our veterans in the 22nd Congressional District across the United States of America for their sacrifice, their inspiring service to all of us, to our country, our states, our communities, and thank you from the bottom of our heart. God bless these wonderful people who do answer the call to serve. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibben.
Would you pray with me? Holy Lord, you have been our dwelling place from generation to generation. Before the mountains were brought forth, even before the earth itself was formed, from everlasting, you are God. As we pause in your presence and acknowledge your infinite being, we cannot help but come to grips with our own finitude and limited hold on the things of this life. So it is with humility that we offer our prayers to you, prayers that ask for your guidance in the living of this day, your wisdom for the choices we make, and your forbearance when we fall short of your intentions. Grant us the reassurance that despite the uncertainty that hovers around us, regardless of our inevitable mistakes and missteps, that in your mercy you have already woven this day into your gracious plan for us. Remind us that you have satisfied us this morning with your steadfast love, which lifts us up, dusts us off, and sends us once again on the path you would have us go. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom, and may your favor rest upon us as you establish the work of our hands this day. In your sovereign name we pray. Amen.
The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the chamber her approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Allen.
The flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain up to 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does where are we? The gentleman from California seek recognition. Could you use a pen now? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise today to celebrate the House passage of my bipartisan bill to designate the Palm Desert VA Clinic in memory of Seymour Cy Kaplan. Cy was a decorated World War II veteran with a relentless passion of service. He enlisted in the U.S. Army at just 17 years old and served our country bravely in the 2nd Army, 2nd Corps Division. For his heroism, he earned 3 battle scars and 2 Purple Hearts. And when his military service ended, his service to our veterans began. For 25 years, Cy served as the commander of the Disabled American Veterans Chapter 78 in the Coachella Valley. His leadership helped countless veterans find healing, community, and a sense of purpose. He also served as a member of my Veterans Advisory Board, where I looked to him as a trusted advisor. We lost Cy 3 years ago at the age of 95. I can think of no better way to honor his legacy than to ensure his name is forever etched into our desert's history at a place where our veterans receive quality care at the Palm Desert VA Clinic, at the clinic he championed to create. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask to address the House and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, the inflation crisis that is being caused by President Biden's destructive policies has hurt small businesses throughout the United States. According to a recent survey, 37% of small business owners were unable to pay their rent just in last month alone. These businesses are struggling because of Joe Biden's decision to put socialist priorities ahead of working Americans. Instead of supporting businesses and improving supply chains, he paid workers to stay home. Instead of returning to American energy dominance, he turned to Green New Deal policies. Instead of fighting inflation, Joe Biden proudly wasted trillions of dollars and sent prices skyrocketing. More than 60 million Americans are employed by small businesses, and they are being crushed by these radical policies. It is time to return to fiscal constraint. It is time to stop the reckless spending, and it is time to once again support our great American small businesses. Thank you, and I yield.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From day one, House Democrats have worked for the people and passed historic legislation to address the challenges facing our country. And clearly, the American people resoundingly supported our efforts. Democrats passed the CHIPS and Science Act that makes significant investments in American manufacturing, which is the backbone of our economy and drives job creation. Democrats passed the Inflation Reduction Act to lower costs at the pharmacy counter, in the grocery aisles, and at the gas pump. This landmark legislation also delivers the most significant action on climate in history while reducing the deficit. Democrats passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to fix our roads and public transit systems. This is one of the largest federal investments in our nation's infrastructure and is laying the foundation for strong economic growth by creating millions of good-paying jobs. While congressional Republicans played politics at the expense of our democracy, Democrats remain steadfast in putting people over politics, and we will continue to deliver transformational investments for America's working families. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and provide to extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In February, war Putin criminal launched his illegal invasion of sovereign Ukraine. His cowardly acts have resulted in the murder of thousands of Ukrainian citizens, the torture of countless others, and destruction of civilian infrastructure. Putin sacrifices young Russians for his personal gain of oil, money, and power. The world witnesses the daily atrocities of war criminal Putin and continue to be shocked. Congress has provided bipartisan support for President Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainian people through sanctions against Putin and his corrupt cronies. A recent Wall Street Journal poll, as significant, shows the majority of Americans continue to support their compassionate desire to assist the heroic people of Ukraine to victory. America must not waver in support of victory for Ukraine over war criminal Putin, and thus help deter other would-be global invaders, such as the Chinese Communist Party against Taiwan and Iran against Israel, with ICBMs against America. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor a dear friend, a former colleague, a trailblazer in our community, Michigan State Senator Vincent Gregory of Southfield, who passed away recently at the age of 74. State Senator Vincent Gregory had a passion for public service his entire life. It was known for his integrity. He was a Vietnam War veteran, a union president, a county commissioner, as well, again, as a former state representative who I had the honor to serve with. In 2010, Vincent made history as the first black resident of Oakland County elected to the Michigan State Senate. He was a strong advocate for voting rights, especially for our overseas service members, and his lasting impact will be remembered for years to come. My thoughts are with his wife of 44 years, Yvonne, and his entire family during this very difficult time. May his life and legacy serve as a testament of all we can accomplish if we lead with compassion, strength, and purpose.
Gentleman from Georgia seek recognition.
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, it is my great privilege to rise today in strong support of S 4359, the resolution to rename the VA's regional office in Atlanta after our late Senator Johnny Isakson. I was proud to co-lead the companion bill in the House with my colleague from Georgia, Congressman Bishop. Senator Isakson was a great friend and a dedicated public servant to not just me, but all Georgians. Over a 45-year career in public service, Senator Isaacson forged his legacy as a champion for America's veterans, concluding with serving as chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee in the United States Senate. After graduating from the University of Georgia, Senator Isaacson went on to serve in both chambers of the Georgia State Legislature. In 1983, he rose to become Republican leader of the Georgia House of Representatives, and in 1999, he succeeded Newt Gingrich as the U.S. Representative for Georgia's 6th Congressional District, to then serving as Senator of Georgia from 2005 to 2019. Throughout his life, Senator Isaacson distinguished himself as a man of character with unmatched dedication to the people of Georgia, and I'm proud to co-lead this legislation to dedicate the VA's regional office in Atlanta as a living monument to his tireless work in advancing the policies that benefit our nation's veterans. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New Mexico seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I rise to seek to ask to address the floor for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, today I rise for students. Today I rise for teachers and doctors. Today I rise for nurses. I rise for those who care for our youngest and those who care for our elderly and disabled. Today I rise and ask for bipartisan support for the DREAM and Promise Act. I rise for those who have been in our country and have contributed so much. I rise for our economy because we know that the dreamers, if we lose them, we lose $500 billion of economic benefit for our country. If we lose our dreamers, our labor force will be decimated because we rely and depend on them. They pay $5.6 billion in federal taxes and $3.1 billion in state and local taxes each year. If the Senate does not take action and pass the DREAM and Promise Act, we will lose our dreamers and all that they contribute to our United States of America, which we love. I ask for everyone to reach out to your senators and encourage them to support those who have given so much to our country.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
My remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize Colonel Lowen R. Hallstrom of Woodland, Pennsylvania, in Clearfield County for his distinguished military service. Colonel Hallstrom is retiring from the Pennsylvania Air National Guard after 36 years of service to our nation and to Pennsylvania. Colonel Hallstrom has served in the Air National Guard since 1985, and today he is the commander of the 193rd Special Operations Medical Group. Colonel Hallstrom served this country in several missions, including Operations Desert Storm, Continuing Hope, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom. Colonel Hallstrom also served the rank of Chief Flight Surgeon by logging more than 173 combat hours. In addition to being a commanding officer in the Air National Guard, Colonel Hallstrom is also a physician in Du Bois, Pennsylvania, where he practices physical medicine, rehabilitation, and pain medicine. Madam Speaker, please join me in congratulating Colonel Hallstrom on his many years of service to our country. We understand that freedom is not free, and on behalf of a grateful nation, we thank him for his service and his commitment to our country. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 1464 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 150, House Resolution 1464. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, Senate 4524, to limit the judicial enforceability of pre-dispute, non-disclosure, and non-disparagement contract clauses relating to disputes involving sexual assault and sexual harassment. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and on any amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to commit. Section 2A. At any time through the legislative day of Friday, November 18th, 2022, the Speaker may entertain motions offered by the Majority Leader or a designee that the House suspend the rules as though under Clause 1 of Rule 15 with respect to multiple measures described in subsection B, and the Chair shall put the question on any such motion without debate or intervening motion. B. A measure referred to in subsection A includes any measure that was the object of a motion to suspend the rules on the legislative day of November 14th, 2022, November 15th, 2022, November 16th, 2022, November 17th, 2022, or November 18th, 2022, in the form as so offered, on which the yeas and nays were ordered, and further proceedings postponed pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20. C. Upon the offering of a motion pursuant to subsection A concerning multiple measures, the ordering of the yeas and nays on proposed postponed motions to suspend the rules with respect to such measures is vacated to the end that all such motions are considered as withdrawn. Section 3. Notwithstanding Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on a vote by the yeas and nays on the question of adoption of a motion that the House suspend the rules offered on the legislative day of November 14th, 2022, or November 15th, 2022, may be postponed through the legislative day of November 18th, 2022. Section 4. On any legislative day during the period from November 21st, 2022 through November 28th, 2022, the journal of the proceedings of the previous day shall be considered as adopted. Section 5. The Speaker may appoint members to perform the duties of the Chair for the duration of the period addressed by Section 4 of this resolution, as though under Clause 8A of Rule 1. Section 6. Each day during the period addressed by Section 4 of this resolution shall not constitute a calendar day for the purposes of Section 7 of the War Powers Resolution 50 U.S.C. 1546. Section 7. Each day during the period addressed by Section 4 of this resolution shall not constitute a legislative day for the purposes of Clause 7 of Rule 13. Section 8. Each day during the period addressed by Section 4 of this resolution shall not constitute a calendar or legislative day for the purposes of Clause 7C1 of Rule 22. Section 9. House Resolution 1463 is hereby adopted.
The gentlewoman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 hour.
Madam Speaker, for the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. I ask unanimous consent that all members be given 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, yesterday the Rules Committee met and reported a rule, House Resolution 1464, providing for consideration of Senate 4524, the Speak Out Act, under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary, as well as 1 motion to commit. The rule further provides the Majority Leader or his designee the ability this week to unblock requested roll call votes on suspensions. The rule also provides roll call votes on suspensions bills considered on November 14th or 15th may be postponed through November 18th. Lastly, the rule provides standard recess instructions for the district work period from November 21st through November 28th and deems passage of House Resolution 1463. Madam Speaker, today's rule provides for consideration of the Speak Out Act, a straightforward bipartisan bill that passed the Senate unanimously to prevent non-disclosure agreements from silencing victims of sexual assault and harassment. Over the past 5 years, we've seen numerous cases of women and men disclosing their experiences of sexual harassment in the workplace. As more people came forward, others felt empowered to share their experiences, and offenders who had long gotten away with such reprehensible conduct increasingly faced consequences for their actions. While many high-profile cases focused on movie executives, actors, TV personalities, professional athletes, and elected officials, sexual assault and harassment has been endemic in American workplaces for a very long time. And the silencing of survivors with non-disclosure agreements has played a significant role in allowing such misconduct to continue. Over the span of multiple congressional hearings, we've heard firsthand accounts of how harassment affects workers in all industries, from farms to offices to restaurants to colleges. Sexual harassment is pervasive in U.S. workplaces. It's not a problem unique to athletes and celebrities that we see on TV. However, the one thing that many of the stories have in common is that the perpetrators are often people in positions of power: CEOs, bosses, managers, and executives. And these people have access to expensive lawyers and PR teams to exploit flaws in our legal system to protect themselves and silence they've abused. But now, thanks to the courage of survivors and the increasing power of women and other historically underrepresented groups in the workplace, there's a newfound recognition of the social and economic consequences of a status quo that enables or excuses such misconduct. And there's new momentum to ensure that the American workplace environment is safe and fair for all. I'm so encouraged that this Congress has been able to come together and pass legislation to address this problem. Earlier this year, Congress passed bipartisan legislation that now prevents companies from using forced arbitration agreements to resolve cases of sexual assault or harassment. Forced arbitration clauses are widespread in employment contracts and generally prevent workers from suing their employer in court. And arbitration proceedings overwhelmingly benefit the employer because the employer decides the venue, terms of mediation, and even the arbitrators themselves. Forced arbitration, combined with non-disclosure agreements, meant that victims were kept silent and forced into settlements over which they had little control and kept predators from facing accountability for their actions. Even more concerning, the silencing of survivors of abuse through forced arbitration and non-disclosure agreements thwarts an important tool for preventing future misconduct. Abusers who are not held responsible are free and, in a sense, encouraged to offend again. And given the stigma that victims of such abuse often encounter, they're less likely to come forward if they think the abuse they endured was an isolated incident. With the passage of the Speak Out Act, both of these legal gimmicks will be banned in cases of sexual assault in the workplace, freeing workers and making corporations take responsibility for actually creating a safe work environment. These laws won't end sexual harassment or abuse in the workplace overnight, but it will now make it easier for victims to seek justice and deter bad behavior. As a woman and the mother of a daughter, like at least a third of women in the American workplace, both of us have experienced or witnessed such workplace behavior, so I wholly support this legislation. In my view, passing the Speak Out Act should be an easy task for the House of Representatives. It's a simple, sensible bill, and it passed unanimously in the Senate, an institution not always known for finding consensus. Here in the House, the Speak Out Act should receive similar treatment, passage with an overwhelming, if not unanimous, majority. But we've been forced by the obstruction of a number of our more extreme Republican colleagues to expend the time needed to pass a rule, engage in hours of debate, and take 4 votes to pass the bill in the House, when we have numerous pressing items demanding Congress's attention before year's end. The fact that the bill passed with all 100 senators in support in an evenly divided Senate should tell you that if there were serious problems with the bill, they've already been resolved. And anyone who's actually read the legislation knows that. NDAs are meant to protect trade secrets and business dealings. Why would anyone try to enable their use in covering up sexual assault? I'm here to get results from my constituents, and that includes measures to ensure that our workplaces are free from sexual assault and abuse. Madam Speaker, I strongly encourage all my colleagues to support today's rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I thank the representative from Pennsylvania for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Today we are here to consider H.Res. 1463, providing for the consideration of the Speak Out Act, among other provisions. Let me be clear. House Republicans agree that victims of sexual harassment and assault deserve justice. Unfortunately, due to the fact that this bill is poorly drafted and questionable findings from the Senate bill remain that were specifically stripped out of the House during judiciary markup, There are still several legitimate concerns surrounding the unintended consequences of H.R. 8227, the Speak Out Act. We must maintain respect for the victims and their privacy. Making settlements less valuable to defendants by making confidentiality provisions unenforceable could leave victims worse off. This bill may force victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment to take their claims to court in a public process, but some victims may be reluctant to speak out in any forum if they know that their stories will be public. Furthermore, removing the benefit of confidentiality may remove the incentives that defendants have to settle and give them more reason to fight harder in court, which may not be in the plaintiff's best interest. The bill is also worded in a way that may also apply to certain post-dispute non-disclosure and non-disparagement clauses, broadly making both pre-dispute and post-dispute non-disclosure and non-disparagement clauses unenforceable and may affect existing settlements. This begs the question, what is the point of drawing up a contract if Congress will eventually step in after the fact and invalidate it? What's more, this bill would effectively impose a new regulatory floor that comes down from the top down, overtaking the role of the state. Republicans do not believe in a one-size-fits-all approach, especially in this case where it may do more harm than good for these victims. This legislation should remind us all to think carefully about federalism and when Congress should enact federal regulatory floors. States have traditionally decided how to regulate contract clauses, and some have already passed laws to regulate these specific clauses relating to sexual harassment and assault. The bill even uses state and tribal laws to define terms within it. But this bill should supersede those state decisions in some cases. Though I believe this bill is well-intentioned, it would be a mistake to rush to pass it as is, where significant concerns need to be addressed. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is for those reasons I oppose this rule and ask members to do the same. I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves, and the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Does the gentlewoman from Minnesota have any other speakers?
Madam Speaker, I'm prepared to close.
As am I.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
Madam Speaker, as I said in my opening remarks, the bill under consideration by this rule is well-intentioned but flawed. It deserves additional time to thoughtfully consider legitimate concerns. House Republicans are committed to ensuring victims of sexual violence receive the justice they are entitled to, but that does not mean the flaws outlined should be ignored. Madam Speaker, again, I oppose the rule, and I encourage members to do the same. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back. Gentlewoman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'm looking forward to the fact that by the end of the week, the Speak Out Act will be signed into law. While these reforms to the non-disclosure agreements and forced arbitration agreements will only go so far, they will create a more even playing field for survivors of sexual assault and harassment. Thousands of people will be freed from the unfair burdens of NDAs, and I sincerely hope this helps bring justice and closure to those who need it. I also recognize that there's a lot more this Congress should do to support both workers and victims of sexual assault. We can't ignore the disproportionate power that most employers hold over their employees, which can often lead to unfair outcomes for workers. Whether it's NDA agreements that silence victims, contracts that undercut workers' pay or rights, forced arbitration clauses, or egregious non-compete agreements, there's much more work to do to guarantee an even playing field for all workers in this economy. I'm proud of the work House Democrats have accomplished for workers this Congress. Although the Senate filibuster has greatly curtailed the scope of what we should do, Democrats and President Biden have secured multiple wins for workers over the past 2 years, and the Speak Out Act is another victory in that column. Madam Speaker, I urge all my colleagues to support today's rule. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. All those in favor say aye. I'm sorry.
You want to call on the res?
Aye.
This is the res.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution is agreed to.
I call for the yeas and nays,
Gentlewoman-
Madam Speaker.
Pardon me?
I call for the yeas and nays, Madam Speaker.
Okay. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise a sufficient number. Having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
You did great up there.
Oh, yeah.
For what purposes the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Jacobs of New York, I inform the House that Mr. Jacobs will vote nay on the rule.
For what purposes the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Member Speaker, as member designated by Congress members Vicente Gonzalez, Jackie Spear, and Tim Ryan, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on HRS 1464.
For what purposes the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
As a member designated by Mr. McEachin of Virginia, inform the House Mr. McEachin will vote yes on House Res 1464.
For what purposes the gentleman from Oregon seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. Beyer of Virginia, I inform the House that Mr. Beyer will vote yes on H-Res 1464.
Again? Yeah. For what purposes the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Newman of Illinois, I inform the House that Congressmember Newman will vote yes on HRS 1464.
For what purposes the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Connolly and Ms. Porter,
I inform the House and the distinguished speaker from Florida that these two members will vote yes on HRES 1464.
Oh, Colorado. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Thanks, Madam Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Joe Courtney of Connecticut 2, I inform the House that Mr. Courtney will vote yes on HRS 1464.
Okay. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek
Madam
recognition?
Speaker, as a member designated by Representative Susan Wild of Pennsylvania, Mr. Lawson of Florida, pursued the House Resolution 8, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on HRS 1464.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York seek recognition?
As the member designated by Representatives Morelli and Kathleen Rice, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on HRES 1464.
For what purpose does a member from the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Wilson of Florida, I inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on HRES 1464.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, Ms. Mikey Sherrill, Mr. Peter DeFazio, and Mr. Jerry Connolly, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on HRES 1464.
Does the gentlelady from Illinois seek recognition?
As the member designated by Representative Horsford, I inform the House that Representative Horsford will vote yes on H.R. 1464.
For, for what purpose does the gentlelady from, from Michigan seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and Ms. Axney of Iowa, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on HRES 1464.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Madam Chair, as the member designated by Mr. Tom Rice of South Carolina pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Rice will vote no on the rule.
purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Palazzo of the state of Mississippi, I inform the House that Mr. Palazzo will vote nay on the rule.
This vote, the yeas are 215, the nays are 208. The resolution is adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to House Resolution 1464, House Resolution 1463 is adopted. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that I may hereafter be considered as the first sponsor of H.R. 3921, a bill originally introduced by Representative Walorski of Indiana, for the purposes of adding co-sponsors and requesting reprintings pursuant to Clause 7 of Rule 12.
Without objection. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, by direction of the Democratic Caucus, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk, with the resolution.
House Resolution 1471, resolved that the following name member be and is hereby elected to the following standing committee.
The gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be considered as read and printed in the record.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. House will be in order. Members and staff, please take your conversations off the floor. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches.
Where is he?
What purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition?
My remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, it has been the honor and a privilege of a lifetime to serve the people of Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District for the last 22 years. Together, we've accomplished so much, from strengthening our national security and cybersecurity in particular, to advancing the rights of people with disabilities, to advocating for our nation's foster youth, and so much more. With less than 2 months left in my term, I'll be leaving Congress with a lot of mixed emotions. But I still believe that politics and government is still a noble profession. And I couldn't be more proud, though, also of the person who will be succeeding me as the next congressman from Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District, Seth Magaziner. Throughout his career, Seth has proven himself to be a committed fighter for working families, and that's exactly what he'll continue to do as a congressman. Seth will be laser-focused on cutting costs for Rhode Islanders, from lowering the price of prescription drugs to cracking down on oil and gas companies that are price gouging everyday Americans. I know that Seth will fight to combat the climate crisis, and he'll work to keep Rhode Islanders safe from the threat of gun violence. Seth will always stand up for anyone who tries to cut older Rhode Islanders' hard-earned Medicare and Social Security benefits. And Seth, I couldn't be more proud and think of a better person to continue serving the people of Rhode Island. Congratulations. I yield back the balance of my time.
The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize the leadership and the service of David Ralston, who recently announced that he would be ending his tenure as Speaker of the Georgia House. David has been Speaker since 2010 and has overseen some of the most historic legislative accomplishments in our state's history. He attended Young Harris College and North Georgia College, where he earned his bachelor's degree with honors. He then went on to graduate from the University School of Law. An attorney by trade, Speaker Ralston started his career in public service in 1992 when he was elected to the Georgia State Senate. In 2002, David was elected to the Georgia House and was chosen as Speaker in 2010. During his time as Speaker, he presided over the enactment of landmark legislation, including the state's first ever income tax cut in 2018. In the wake of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, he led the effort to create and pass the state's hate crime law. Earlier this year, he was one of the greatest proponents of legislation, saying that this bill was his only priority for 2022. The bill was a complete revamp of the state's mental health care services and passed with unanimous support. He has been heralded as fair, thoughtful, and level-headed by those on both sides of the aisle. While he will still serve in the State House, his presence on the dais will be missed. A committed public servant, statesman, and a dear friend, I want to thank David Ralston for his leadership and for being a great suite-mate when we served together in the Georgia State House. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today with more good news. A wonderful organization in my district, Let's Build Beds, serves Northwest Ohio and does exactly what its name implies, building beds for children whose families are in need. The organization's mission states that we believe that every child deserves a bed of their own to sleep in at night. We believe that every child is full of infinite potential, and we help children by providing a bed and empowering them to assemble it and be successful. Partnering with local Rotary chapters, Let's Build Beds brings together various charitable organizations for group projects to make beds, furnish the bedclothes, and deliver and assemble the beds to children in need. Older children often participate in this real-life Lego project. I've been privileged to help build these beds with community members and to learn from impacted families how important this joyous venture is. This constructive, simple idea can be replicated everywhere. I look forward to future building opportunities with schools, churches, and organizations dedicated to giving a lasting gift to children and families, especially during the upcoming holiday season. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge the outstanding accomplishments of the Roselle Women on the Move, a volunteer organization making positive impact in the lives of young women in my community that came to see me yesterday here at the Capitol. I was impressed with the mentorship Roselle Women on the Move provides. Their mentoring has undoubtedly equipped the young women and girls in my community with the tools they need to achieve their dreams. I commend Borough of Roselle President, Councilwoman at Large Denise Wilkerson for spearheading this group and the other women and leaders that joined her yesterday for their mentorship. I'm grateful to each of them for using their life experiences to improve the lives of our children in my community. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise for a series of issues that I think are important. First of all, two simple words: thank you to all of the election officials in all 50 states, the bulk of whom worked unceasing to ensure that the votes of the American people would be answered, counted, and respected. Let me also say how important it is in this moment that we recognize the responsibilities of the federal government to raise the debt ceiling, not for itself, but to ensure the stability and security and protection of the American people. Medicare, Social Security, defense, all of these issues fall under the debt ceiling. Not recklessly, but rightly, we should do that. And I say to the Federal Reserve, stop raising the interest rates. You're negatively impacting the consumer who is trying to stand up on their feet. That is important. Finally, I say we should pass H.R. 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals. What is it about? Reconciliation, restoration, recognizing the history of the descendants of enslaved Africans, and recognizing the unequal distribution of wealth to ensure that there is a recognition of dealing with the disparities in education, disparities in housing, disparities in social issues. I believe we can work together. Let us come together on these issues that I've mentioned. That's what America is all about. I yield back.
Pursuant to Section 1 of House Resolution 1230, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow for morning hour debate and noon for legislative business.